Hey, everybody, tune in to Recent Tartarians.
Recent Tartarians. Recent Tartarians. Recent Tartarians. Recent Tartarians.
Hey, everybody, tune in to Recent Tartarians.
Recent Tartarians. Recent Tartarians.
Somewhere in the world, there are people awake and others are sleeping. Have you noticed the wellness the wellness company. This is something you sent me, the Beyond the Maze. What's this all about?
So this is something incredibly interesting. First of all, welcome everyone to the Exertus show. Like and subscribe.
Aw, I love you. Good to see you.
And you. So this is something incredibly interesting. I stumbled across God knows where, when you're having different connections, YouTube recommendations, Telegram recommendations, whatever it is. This is initially an investigation by, I think you see the name on the page if you make it a little bit bigger on a Substack. Incredibly interesting because I'm sure everyone who's been following during the C crisis, there basically were two sides. One was the Fauci new prosthetic mask flappy thing every day, right? And the other side was people like Dr. Peter McCullough, who is mentioned here. And then
if Drew's a part of it, I'm kind of curious. I have to admit, that's kind of interesting. Wow.
And then, Steve Bannon interviewing Peter McCullough a lot, all of that. And this is not now directly implicating any of those into what this is about, but this is just who else is related. And overall, it simply seems that during the course, because a certain faction, the method or the model I'm using by now is almost the Sean Ross model, this idea, of the pharaonic system with two wings, like to say, two parties, two wings of the same bird, right? So the Royalists and the Republicans. And then, this would actually be the division between, let's say, Putin-type systems and supposedly Republican-type systems like in America. But anyhow, even within America, you have two sides at least, let's say, which are both similarly controlled, it seems. And the alternative to the Fauci side was, pushing all kinds of supplements and so on during that time. And what just seems interesting is that behind and within that network is this thing called the Wellness Company. And they not only seem to have connections to all these high-profile figures that were pushing these things, they also seem to have connections to all different types of smaller and higher profile YouTube channels where they're pushing it and promoting it. And then at the back end, this is more explained in the article, it also has some strange connections to Tim Ballard and this whole operation, whatever it was, and more specifically, this new movie that came out 1 year ago called Sound of Freedom, which I'm sure you have heard. And this is
I got to rant for a second. Before I worked for CNN, I worked for HLN because you always have to do a little something, right? So CNN owns HLN, and so one of the first things we did.
1 second, CLN. What is that? Who is that? I never heard of that.
CNN is
CNN. I'm aware. Okay, but
yeah, and then HLN is like the home learning network, I guess.
What is that?
They own. Okay. And we were trying to sex it up, try to make HLN more cool. And I still love a lot of these people involved. Sam Shacker, don't hate her. She's all right. Even though she's like super anti-gun and she's like a liberal mom on the media, that's her job. And I don't know. I don't know what the word is for it, but it is what it is, And then there's Dr. Drew, also Obaduguro, I think his name is, he does sports now, and he's been there since the beginning. He's actually a really nice guy. It was like really interesting people. A lot of the people that were in the show were trying so hard to become famous in their like late 30s in Los Angeles, and they were desperate to get along with people. And I thought that was really interesting. You can see how Hollywood works. Like it forces you to try to get along. But Dr. Drew, I always kind of liked. You know what I mean? And it's kind of scary because I could easily see myself in the future looking back and being friends with Dr. Fauci. Like that could easily happen. But Dr. Drew, he seems like a nice guy, and he's been through like the trauma of the AIDS crisis. Like he was a doctor in the AIDS crisis, so he saw a lot of things happen, and he doesn't trust the medical system nearly as much as you might think he does. And he was really open-minded towards 4chan, and I mean at the time when no one understood what it was, but he was also interested in like doing an Ask Me Anything on Reddit and things like that. So I always kind of had a certain respect for Dr. Drew. I like Drew more than most of the people involved, and he made me tea one time. Like when I first met him, he was a cool guy. So I can see also like the benefit. Like he's been on Timcast. He's trying his best to ambassadorially deal with the other sides of media. He's surrounded constantly in people who think that we are all crazy, right? Anybody who doesn't just vaccinate and go along with the flow are told they're crazy by his constituents. and he continually interacts and talks to people who haven't been vaccinated, who don't trust the vaccine, and he has been open about the fact that it doesn't do what it was initially promised to do. So I don't know, in just defense of Dr. Drew, I don't know if that's even necessary, but
Oh, sure. And the thing is, only everyone, please really go read the whole article yourselves, and also maybe pull up the next link where you can see the BitChute video, where it's kind of explained. I put it in a private chat, the link below it, or the next. I think you skipped that one link. Oh no, it's two above.
I just want to make sure that everyone knows where
Yeah.
they can find Kristen Elizabeth's Wellness Company article, so they can look into this group, the Wellness Company, and see like what's involved, with Peter McAuliffe and Drew. But yeah, and so the next one was,
of course, some of them. Just go back for a second and scroll down for a bit, just so I can
Sure.
explain it a little bit. So I don't have the whole picture in my head anymore, because there's always so much information, and doesn't mean that any of those people there are evil or anything. It just those also then got implicated through whatever marketing deals or appearing on shows and so on. And it's just highly interesting how can such like this wellness company, appear, have all these very strange connections, and overall just seems to have created a momentum, let's say, for a certain type of alternative healthcare view. And they just basically have been positioning that over years now. And I forgot through which methods exactly, but basically they're getting ready to cash in like real good. Yeah. And here again is the question, what I always come back to, and we talked about this even on the show quite a few times, the medical studies independently done in a lab by Dr. Stefan Lanke, who basically, and I'm not going to go too deep into this now, but has again finally applied the control experiment to the initial virus type experiments made by, now I even forgot his name, Pasteur or whatever. And he basically shows to be quite cautious about how I'm framing it, that there are very big questions. And of course, these questions in terms of how to exactly deal with a so-called virus infection, what is it exactly, how exactly does it occur, can it be spread in the ways that we are told, and all of that. These topics most oftentimes are actually not being discussed by those very high-profile individuals, whether they are in America or, where I know them in a different way, in Germany. There was one very interesting guy, maybe want to pull him up, by the name of Dr. Sucharit Bhakti. Sucharit Bhakti, but if you just whatever you Sucharit Bhakti, Bhakti, and Sucharit Suh, yes, he's very famous. So very nice guy. He's a German guy, although obviously not, how do you call it, fifth generation, but I mean by now with Tartaria, who knows from when he emigrated exactly.
This is indigenous kraut, bro. This is what cabbage looks like deep down. This is under the layer,
right?
Like,
yes.
Yeah.
No, and his German is flawless, and he's a very respected professor. And then he became very famous during the crisis because he was one of the very few, very high-ranking individuals that immediately said, "Oh, something's wrong. Be careful," and so on. But even here, as an example, when then asked about these control experiments, he deliberately simply chose not to comment. So this is something that was simply then being left out of the discussion, not blaming him for anything, because he's been dealing with this model all his life, and maybe it's too much dissonance for him to even consider something else. So just saying that even people that are the greatest heroes now, the greatest ones at least, usually don't go to that core aspect of the whole idea. And then there is something else, just as we're on that whole topic of revising this time.
Science versus narrative. Yeah.
There was one very famous and still extant podcast called Corona Ausschuss. Yeah? Maybe you can even enter that, Corona and then Ausschuss. Yes, Schuss. Yes, almost. Let's see.
Almost.
Yes, but see, it's popular enough.
God, you know what? If we ever played Scrabble, you would just clean the table. I gotta say.
And what the story here is also very interesting. Now I can hear a slight feedback, I believe. Is this was again founded by a few lawyers, I believe 4 lawyers initially, and this was the one podcast in Germany which was immediately, let's say, critical, started only a few months after the first lockdowns, and it became amazingly popular very quickly. It was like the weekly go-to source for everyone who had any critical thinking skills, and they really did a great job interviewing so many experts, so many doctors, so many lawyers, legal, whatever it could be, from all expert psychologists, everybody. Yeah, even then some quite popular US people, like this former Surgeon General for the US, this woman who's pretty tough and cool, different people. And
Ooh, and
there's
they have a really convenient securewhistleblower.com option here where you can anonymously whistleblow and it is encrypted and sent directly. That's brilliant. So you don't have to you can anonymize who you are. You could probably go to a library or something if you were worried about your IP, but the likelihood that this data can get somewhere without you getting in trouble for sharing that data is very good that this is built in.
So that's a good thing for sure. But before anyone does that, let me finish the story. This has been going on for a few years. It's even still ongoing. And there were basically two, let's say, main individuals, two lawyers, one called Rainer Füllmich and the other one Viviane Fischer. And I'm not there, so I can't know exactly. I only listened to the different reports. And basically, Rainer Füllmich was accused of, how do you call it? Not laundering the money, but taking the money away they donated, because it was the one beacon of hope. People were donating like crazy. Yeah.
So it was improper use of funds, or he was diverting
this
the
is
funds?
This is what he was accused of as the main guy. But now it seems to turn out that in the background, they simply had like crazy costs for the streams they set up. They were done professionally, but they were probably done on a budget that was probably 10x as much as it could have been or would have had to be. But this is partially explained because this was a former mainstream media company.
Yeah, they don't know how to do things cheaply. They do things
not just
professionally.
that, but they lost all their money also. So, and was kind of revolved with one of the lawyers or something. Anyhow, that cost quite some money, but there still were millions. They accused him, but then it almost seems as if the other individuals were maybe acting with even less, how would you say it, due diligence or whatever. And now there is a lawsuit going on, basically, where I think he is being accused, and he even got arrested at some point because of that. So he had to undergo quite a few things. But now, from the reports that are coming out from the courtroom by independent reporters, it seems as if he's vindicating himself and the whole thing is unfolding. And why I'm mentioning this, not to blame anyone for anything, but just to say again, with these operations, quickly a lot of money is accumulated. It's not very transparent what's happening. And then maybe even just because of the money, people start fighting. Although also here, there was one interesting schism maybe, or at least something that later was used by Rainer as a reasoning maybe as to why some people were now angry at him, which I found very curious that he picked that particular example. I had been watching maybe a few dozens of those streams. You see there's hundreds. And in one particular one I had to watch, Dr. Stefan Lanka, and also I believe it was Dr. Thomas Cowan, Cowan, which were both going together with Dr. Andy Kaufman pretty hard into the whole idea of, let's just say, what is the virus exactly and how exactly to define it. They were presenting this, I would say, truly alternative view. And interestingly enough, Rainer Füllmich, during the conversation of about 1 to 2 hours, was the only one really giving them the room and the space to explain. Viviane, maybe due to ignorance and simply being a lawyer, was more like, oh, this is too outlandish what you're trying to say. Oh, Andy Kaufman is with Doctor.
It's really hard not to make the synchronicity. I'm just saying.
Okay. But Andy, I don't know.
Dr. Andrew Kaufman. All right.
Yeah, right. Yes.
Okay. Andy Kaufman. I'm just saying. And like the fact that he died because of some rare kind of cancer that doesn't really happen, I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised. A little bit of face surgery. No, I'm just kidding. Keep going.
So it's just interesting that Füllmich picked that example, that maybe this caused a schism. And so both Viviane and also their main doctor they had always on the panel, or almost always, called Dr. Wolfgang Wodak, who made himself pretty famous in a positive sense, because as some of you may or may not remember, Wolfgang Wodak, Wodarg. He made himself a name because during the so-called swine flu crisis, was this a thing in the US, the swine flu?
We had media about it. I don't know how big of it. Like, I didn't know anyone with swine flu, but I think it happened in Texas or Florida, I guess. So yes. It was on the TV.
And the interesting thing is they basically maybe tried something similar to the sea crisis already all back at that time. But as many of you will remember who heard about it, you only heard about it, but there wasn't no lockdowns or anything. And why that was partially because of Dr. Wolfgang Wodak, because at least in Germany, he was the head of some important commission or something. He
Dude,
took
swine
a
flu
proper...
was pretty bad. No one talks about this really. Like at the time, it seemed like it was, like an impact. The way that they wanted COVID to be. Everyone was talking about swine flu, but I didn't meet anyone who had swine flu. I mean, 10,000 people in the entire state of California, I guess is what it said, right?
That's what it says, yeah. But basically, it didn't get there because people like Wolfgang Wodak actually, in a way, properly looked at the data and were like, something's not right here. So he had a big integrity and credibility. But when it came to that topic, and you could tell, talking with Dr. Stefan Lanka and Dr. Thomas Cowan,
Plus, he's adorable.
Kaufman,
look at him. I mean,
he was not ready really to entertain their theorem, which I just found was not very intellectually honest. And it's just incredibly interesting to me, where it's almost for me the question.
What's up, Naki? Nachiketa.
Hi, Nachiketa. Why is it happening? Is it just because of cognitive dissonance, or because they want to deliberately hide certain aspects and just not have them properly discussed? Because if something makes no sense, why not, take the time to dissect it, show it to everyone, it makes no sense, and it's off the table. So
which direction are you saying? Because on one hand, swine flu was not as bad as it could have been, but on the other hand, swine flu set precedent for us to prepare for situations as bad as it could be. So if it does, this is why like CDC or sociologists will always say, if I prepare, you will be upset at me because you'll think I went overboard. Because if I sufficiently am ready for a disaster, it's going to feel like I went overboard. That's the only way to do it. And if you're not prepared, then you're going to say, wow, why didn't you go overboard? In America, we have examples like Katrina, where before Katrina, there was no law that said the government could go into a place before there was a storm. You know what I mean? And then they said, well, let's just wait 5 or 6 days and just really be sure there's a storm. Let's just make sure how do we know there's actually a disaster now? And then they said, okay, well, now we should probably make a law that we can go into a place before there's disaster, just to be careful if a disaster comes. And now we have precedent that, I could be standing in my home, a nurse, a nun, all these people could be in their little village, and then FEMA can come in and say, a storm is coming, get out of your house. And like we could say, but I'm a meteorologist, I don't think a storm is coming. Yeah, but ours said there is. Get in the building. And now we're going to make you dig, and we're going to make you all these rules that exist. They're all set up because of things like swine flu, things like Katrina, things like these little storms, which didn't, like the hurricanes, the tornadoes. We use those for the advantage of preparing for a major disaster. I mean, do you think that there's any precedent for that?
Are you like a press agent for Homeland Security?
I'm telling you exactly why they do it. Think about what happens if you don't. I mean, so with Katrina, like there's obviously reasons why it made sense to let it happen. You have socioeconomic prejudice and corporatism that wanted that land. They had native indigenous people that were not making money off of that land, and they wanted to steal it from them, right? So you can look at it like that.
Which is what they're doing right now in Canada, I think, no?
They're doing it everywhere. They're doing it in Hawaii, but the point is, to do that, you need to have some sort of a natural disaster, and you have to do it in such a way that you have preparedness to immediately be the person to clean up afterward.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's really exactly
good PR,
right. But
you're explaining it exactly right. I love it. It's perfect. And that's the perfect logic that would be used. Question number one is, let's just call it like that. And this would even, with the C narratives, this would even be the alternative mainstream if I say, how natural is the storm really? Yeah. So much a storm is coming, right? Isn't Trump
the less natural, the better, honestly. Now you can just say if it's the less natural, the more it's your fault, right? Because you all participated in making the human situation possible. Like if you guys didn't buy all these cable boxes,
if you guys didn't pay all your taxes, the military wouldn't have the money for all the
don't shoot the messenger. Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, number one, how natural is it? And what the real thing is regarding the whole biological crisis is simply the question of germ theory and the question of biological transmission. That's basically what it comes down to. And that's the, let's say, theory that was being discussed. And that's the real point, because if, let's say, the model of transmission maybe is not exactly happening individual to individual the way they're describing it, then of course, because this is the basis for any masks, any lockdowns, and anything they were forcing back on you. And that's the one thing that these high-profile individuals, American or German, even alternative ones, usually are simply not ready to discuss or disclose or whatever. I once heard a comment by this one High Wire famous guy. What's his name? Or famous? He's also quite well known, I think, the High Wire. And it was a sentence he mentioned something, or so sometimes, or even maybe even the
right.
him, but maybe it was even in relation to the presidential candidate. What's his name? Is he a presidential candidate? I'm even lost now. Where I
RFK,
saw that. Maybe
Rectenwald.
RFK, because I think RFK mentioned it in like half a sentence that, yeah, maybe there's something really going on there. But at least usually this is not really being, the whole germ transmission theory is not really being discussed, just because the whole industry and the whole lockdowns and everything, is contingent on that. So yeah,
Right.
that's so much for that. We just wanted to show the parallels, and this is the really good explanation by Amazing Polly, who some may have seen before. She's now showing up on random channels, I guess, just because she's getting banned everywhere. And she's just pulling it together. And towards the end, at minute 40 maybe, or 45, somewhere there's a chart also, where you can, at the back, 40 or 45, where you can then see which companies got funding by this wellness company. Yeah, here. And then suddenly started promoting it. Some are not promoting it anymore, this and that, but it just seems to be a huge operation.
It's like all, I mean, because these are all new faces. Like, it seems as if all the old holistic doctor health faces are dead, and and then here's a bunch of new faces. Don't get me wrong, some of these people are my friends. But
and even here, it doesn't mean anything just because they accepted a sponsorship from that company. But maybe that's also why I'm pulling this up. So if any of Andreas's friends that are involved with any of those, they can check this out themselves and just do their own due diligence. That's all I'm saying. It just seems highly suspicious.
A couple of people that I'm sure would be interested to like dig into this a bit more that I can see right here: Zero Hedge, Ivory Hecker. Alex Stein, of course, would be down to talk about this. Zuby, I'm sure, wants to know more about the situation. Alex Jones would look into this to some extent, but of course he's making money off of selling supplements. So but maybe that's part of what, I don't know. This is interesting to think about. I mean, you just like the thing again, the fact that 4 or 5 years ago, there was an entire different cast of holistic doctors. And they're all replaced, and some of these people are people from CNN, HLN, is kind of interesting, right? I mean, that's
what do you mean? There's a crossover from people there?
Yeah, well, like Dr. Drew's in here, you know what I mean? Like there are people,
right.
There are former media fixed personalities in here, and then you've got the
in
new
defense of anyone who maybe wasn't aware of this, and again, everyone, please check it out yourself to understand the real scope or the back end of this whole thing and how problematic it could really be or not. But in defense of anyone, it could be similar scene, just like with the whole, UFO stories, where you had all these authors and artists and whatever for decades going on about their topic and trying to get reach, not getting anywhere. And then suddenly Gaia TV and whatever else comes along and probably quite cheaply starts to, or for them, it's a lot of money.
Don't you need something like an alternative holistic medical like community to emerge? I mean, isn't this kind of an essential? Wouldn't all of these people want to be part of the good version of this anyway? I mean, Elon Musk has been critical of vaccination. All of these people have been very critical of Fauciism, right? So this is a post-Fauci alternative that they're trying to create a faction for. Isn't that reasonable?
Well, yes, the only thing I would say is if you get involved, first check if it's not actually an intelligence operation and therefore in some way, shape or form part of a tightly controlled opposition. That's
right. But what is it exactly? Maybe I'm missing, like, what is it that this narrative has been saying that sticks out to you as a negative?
The issue is I'm missing too many points here. Go back to the article and maybe let's just scroll through it. I mean, we can even read it. It's interesting enough
let's do that
because there's too many aspects which I'm clicking on now from the top, basically, because then I know I'm missing something because it really is relevant.
Yeah, for sure. Use your nice, beautiful Austrian voice.
Okay, let's see. So I'm not going to read everything. So wellness companies offering dietary supplements to telehealth. And basically they emerged during the COVID-19 crisis through well-respected names as they are listed here. And yeah, of course, they made them skeptical against government decreed measures and offered their own solutions, which was a slew of solutions that will be listed. And USA Today featured TWC in a very positive light. And all right, and also because there is a particular individual involved that actually really has intelligence operation connections and then became instrumental apparently in starting the funding for this whole thing. So questionable individuals regarding close ties to big farmers and deep connections to the intelligence community, including TWC's former chief marketing officer, who brags about having secured over $300 million in contracts for information operations, PSYOP, and intelligence support. Then it goes down to Tim Ballard, just to put this together properly. Yeah,
The
and it was
Mormon.
interesting. Yeah, yes. So that this is also somehow tied in to the wellness company and to some other individuals.
Let it never be said that my interests don't converge all over each other.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. And then let's see. Yeah, you have Predictive Technology Group, one of the largest biobanks. This is where the Mormons come in, of course. And then it's interesting that you have the connection between anti-child trafficking and the biotech, and then connections to potentially a Mormon church.
Yeah.
And as you know, you told me this story, or you mentioned this many times, they have the biggest genealogy records ever, or something
they're
like
doing
that.
pretty good. Yeah. And they have
So
investments in other companies too. I think they sold like in ancestry.com, and they have like 3 other like genomic websites, plus they're invested because the Latter-day Saint Church has a corporation called Intellectual Reserve. And that's the thing that owns the Mickey Mouse. You know what I mean? Like they have a corporation that owns all of their stuff. And that corporation, it owns stock in other things like pharmaceutical companies and opiate pharmaceutical companies, right? Like they're involved in production of a lot of the, the medical problems that exist, because they've been since the 80s investing in the best things you could put money into, which turned out to be drug companies. So they also are associated with vaccinology. The current prophet is a doctor who did heart surgeries and things like that, and he promoted the vaccine and things like that. But there's a huge, like I would say the majority of Mormons are against vaccinations, are afraid of vaccinations, and are confused that their prophet told them to get vaccinated. So there's definitely a conflicting narrative amongst the membership versus the elite at the top.
And who would be the current LDS prophet or something? Does it exist?
Yeah, so we call him P. Nelly, President Nelson. He's 100 years old. There's a pretty funny meme right now. I don't know if I can find it. You can't just type P. Nelly and expect to find it. President Nelson. Sorry. He's 100 years old. There's a funny meme going around right now with him crying, holding a box of Legos that says ages 4 to 99, because he's now too old to play with Legos. But yeah, no, I mean, this is the future of science-based faith in a sense. Like they're going towards a religion, and I'm saying they as opposed to I, which is focused on living the longest life you can. Like to be a prophet, you're going to have to be over 100. In the next 20 years, you're going to have 120-year-old prophets. You know what I mean? And it's going to be like, you're going to, the Mormons are the oldest people on earth. That's going to be part of the stereotype, is that they can live longer than the Japanese. So they're obsessed with health, and it makes a lot of sense for them to be interested in health. And the fact is, they were only recently interested in medicine because of this guy. Before that, they're far more interested in folk arts, folk medicine, folk faiths. And there's definitely more Germanic and British, old Germanic British medicine that is practical there. Like people will grow willow and make willow tea instead of aspirin. Like these kinds of things exist. And so it's interesting, like there is like a folk movement that is associated with holistic medicine. And you see this a lot. I mean, like Alpha Vedic does this as well. A huge movement towards growing your own medicine, availability in natural sources for those nutrients and medicines. These things are, I mean, that's all good. I'm for all that. I think those are actually good.
Yeah. Sure. So here it goes on. Okay, they are obsessed with it. Then you have this Tim Ballard connection, who did The Sound of Freedom. And then
Sorry, couldn't
Tim
help myself.
Ballard, here it says, often displayed messianic behavior. Then you have some allegations against him.
Okay, so he displayed some messianic behavior. This feels a little grasping at straws, but that's okay. I mean, granted, he was an ego freak who was this is the thing, like he probably would have been fine if he just picked up prostitutes to work with him, but he was bringing like wives of other Mormons on this trip. Like everything he did was set up to offend and upset people who had, their husbands who were like important in positions. So I don't know, the messianic thing. Yeah, he was trying to save kids. He's probably crazy. Agreed. And yeah, he worked for the CIA. Okay, so a lot of Mormons worked for the CIA, admitted. Like, who's wondering about that? Who's wondering, like, hey, they hired a bunch of sober people, and then what happens to them when they work at the CIA? Crackheads. I'm just saying. So it's not healthy. It's not a healthy place to send your kids to work. Mamas, don't let your babies grow up to be CIA agents.
Yeah, we'll have more examples of that coming up later today. And then you have, introducing this new thing where they say Mission Safe Harbor. They make this 1.5-minute movie. There is a page where you can donate, but from what I could see, there's not any more information really, and it's not really clear. Again, example which I put forward before, you can do a nice media op and then claim, oh, I'm doing all these
Ballard
things.
thing, this is such a non-issue, but what happened was Ballard was trying to make himself seem closer to the church. He's like, no, I really am, like, not only am I a Mormon, I'm on the up and up, and the Mormons like me. And then so if you think that the Mormons are trustworthy because they're trying to save kids and that they're going to put money into this program, and so they're like, oh, well, maybe he's associated with, because if you look up the word Ballard's a very important person in the church. He was like in his 80s at the time. And so he kind of like made it look like this Ballard was okay with Tim Ballard. And, he was just riding on the curtails of somebody else's name, essentially, Elder Ballard. It's not a huge deal. It's lame, but it's like, I find it really ironic that Vice, of all people, is publishing articles about the inner workings of the Mormon church like they care or no. You know what I mean? Like, what is the deal here? And what ended up happening was Elder Ballard found out about it and said, he's like, yeah, no, I don't really know this guy, and I haven't really been promoting this thing. And then they ended up pulling all of his books off the library because they're like, well, we don't like this guy. It's a little shady that he said that. And that's when it all spiraled out of control and people started coming out against Tim Ballard, who again isn't a health guy. He's just a human trafficking figure, right? He's a popularist.
Right. And then to make it a bit shorter, you can scroll down to the Sustainable Development Goals graphics and the quote right above it, because basically he then, strangely enough, was involved in this Ile de Vache, which is Ile Avache, where he's apparently...
So you think it's like a money washing? Tim Ballard's site was for the washing of all the funds? Like,
yeah, that's...
Okay, that could make sense. I'm not saying I know, but that makes sense because the idea of an international NGO that you can put money into, and then that it does favors for you and also keeps your money in a trust out of taxes. Like, I can see this being a huge thing.
And now you can scroll down to the island picture, I guess. So basically there was some involvement also with Haiti and this guy or what's associated with him. And strangely enough now, developing like whatever kind of projects there.
Who's Lopez again? Mr. Lopez? David Lopez he's from R. Okay, he's from R. Lopez has been involved in another organization, Mission 60, which offers services in military style. Deliberate discomfort training to executives and high-powered individuals located in South Jordan, Utah. Their motto is "Get comfortable being uncomfortable." According to Lopez's biography on the organization's website, David Lopez served as a U.S. Navy SEAL and is a subject matter expert on tactical operations, classified global counterterrorism operations, terrorist countermeasures, protection, security, and close-quarter combat tactics. Mr. Lopez has a tremendous depth of experience in these areas and has high specialized training in support of classified intelligence operations. Beyond this, his intense military training and experience is invaluable since he understands critical processes, performances, and can advise on the optimization for a variety of areas beyond these fields. Since leaving the U.S. Navy, he's trained over 20 SWAT teams in and around the U.S. He's also instructed numerous special response teams of the Department of Homeland Security. He's also conducted multiple rescue missions with Operation Underground Railroad. Led to the rescue of over 200 children, arrest of over 50 traffickers, and he now serves as special projects manager for Blackwater and conducts security operations around the world for select clients. Okay, so David did well.
Yeah, and then I guess on this island they're doing these trainings or something like this.
Is this it? This is the island?
Yeah.
Ooh, that's beautiful. This is the kind of, this is the thing, these kinds of videos. Did you see the program recently? Wow, that does look like Epstein's Island. The program is a documentary I just watched recently. The program, Netflix. Is this it? Interesting show about kids kidnapped by their parents, paid and sent to Ivy Ridge. Ivy Ridge, is that what I do? Yeah. So like this happened to me. It happened to a lot of kids. The parents were like, these kids are not doing what they're supposed to be doing. Let's send them to one of these like disciplinary boarding schools where they mind control them, therapeutic boarding school camps. But then they turned out to be run by Mormons, kind of similarly to these are like former military people or like security guard people. And they just like mind control these kids, make them do these horrible things where they're like, put your hand apart, hand together, hand apart, hand together for 8 hours at a time or whatever. And these kids got drugged, molested, every possible thing, and then if that wasn't enough, they got sent to the desert survival programs. But this program recently, because Paris Hilton was in one of these things, she's paying to look into these things. They went back to one of the schools and the school's abandoned. They have like all the paperwork there, all these uniforms ready to go, but they just walked away from it because there's a larger organization called WASP with 2 W's, which is in Utah, and it purchases buildings and builds these shell company schools. And the kids will go to there for like 4 or 5 years. The school will get shut down, and then they'll build another one somewhere else. And parents are so desperate to send their kids to some disciplinary school, and they get $4 worth of food a day for $30,000 a month. And then these people end up building these giant mansions in Utah. So, I mean, they're definitely, there's some, and the thing is, a lot of these kids come out of this thing either completely destroyed or they come out like, mind control victims that sometimes if they're useful, they turn them into agents, right? Like, cause it's the most practical thing. Other times though, they're broken. Like these people are broken for the rest of their lives and they can't like leave rooms. They can't leave buildings. They're just scared.
So the story continues. I have to scroll down further because only then it gets actually to the connection. So they have this huge development there with this watermark company in accordance with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. There's also a movie about this. You can just scroll down, and then it gets into Foster Colson and the alternative healthcare empire. Scroll down just a little bit more, and then it really gets into this whole thing and whatever I couldn't explain because honestly I can't contain the whole story in my head. So in January 22, Lopez and Colson jointly. Okay, so this is relevant because this Lopez guy is involved in this strange development on Haiti. And Lopez and Colson jointly founded a company called International Health Brands, Integro Capital. And then in June 2022, which is very recently actually, they founded the Wellness Company. And this serves as an umbrella. They have
in the last month or so, the United States has started occupying Haiti, right? So the U.S. military flies Marines in the Haiti embassy, evacuating some staff. Like we've just taken over Haiti in a lot of ways in the last month. So this also fits into that.
Definitely. Okay, so there is all kinds of companies involved with this. And I'm seeing where the connection is. Right. Q Biologics is one of many high-powered genetic medicine research companies currently furthering the forward march of the same gene-based medicine technology that underlies the mRNA COVID-19 products rolled out by Pfizer, BioNTech, and Moderna. And is predictably couched, it's a bit further down, in language around helping sick people and ushering in a better healthcare future for everyone. But its managing team and board are stacked with personnel working in the fields of biopharmaceuticals, infectious disease, molecular biotechnology, nanotech, and the like. Obvious questions are, why would Foster Colson, who claims to be developing the largest alternative parallel healthcare system in the United States, A, promote his empire of goods and services to a market segment which is manifestly averse to gene-based medicine, good point, B, place himself on the board of a company to further develop this technology, and C, position himself and his companies to financially benefit through investments in their research and products, unbeknownst to his TWC clientele. So this Q Biologics is apparently where where it ties in together. But yeah, there's more things. And then you have this idea, if you scroll further down, of the covered intelligence society, a private membership of intelligence, innovative thought leaders. Society members are trained by former CIA case officers in the art of clandestine service to enhance their business and daily lives. And here is also this connection then where people get trained by ex-FBA agents and so on and spend I don't know how much money to supposedly get some kind of a training. Yeah. And you have this Christopher Alexander guy who's LinkedIn as well. Anyways, quite a few strange crossovers in places maybe you wouldn't expect it, and just relevant for anyone involved in it to maybe, check this out a little bit more, really read through this and just better understand what they're involved in, if this could not ultimately simply be a front for some kind of alternative opposition or controlled opposition, maybe even then funneling money to places where people investing in it wouldn't necessarily.
Liberty blockchain. Wow. So they're creating a trust key that they can use, trust coin that they can use for overseas contingency operations. All right. Yeah. Well, I mean, at very least, they sound effective, right? Like these are people that could get the job done, So if they're actually interested in holistic medicine, then that would be nice. Because, a lot of the time the holistic medicine people are either lazy or if they're really good at their job, they get killed. And so,
Good point. Yeah.
Well, you had this lady though. I want to make sure people take the time to watch the Amazing Polly
She
on.
Explains it much better than I could. So
no, that's a good sum up though. Actually, I think that's piqued our interest in. This is interesting. These are people we know. These are people we care about, and who knows? Like it's really easy to give some money to some people and put their face on a website. This is what Epstein did all the time to make himself seem like he was associated with great people. Even if great people, then a few people were like, oh, well, hey, my friend's on there, so I should be on there too. Like I can see how this could happen to innocent people as well. We shouldn't just assume that everyone involved with it's like,
no, of course, and she says that as well. She says it as well. But it's just like I said, like the issue with the whole UFO thing when Gaia came along or whatever, you have someone suddenly shelling out lots of money while people are maybe willing to fall in line. And it was also discussed, at least by Polly, as to what extent it could be that people would be editorially restricted, I think, to potentially not talk negative about specific types of new medicines that are coming out, something along those lines, where it's just like, this buy-in, like you had to during the crisis, at least in Austria. They
get the people
so much
actually
ad money. They shelled so much, even extra official government money they gave to all the newspapers. And even today, I watched one of the popular talk shows in Austria, and at least it was mentioned there. And he said, yeah, well, basically, obviously, they got money to shut the fuck up and, just invite the appointed experts. It was so blatantly obvious. But anyhow, I'm just still wondering how all these media individuals don't seem to have any remorse or anything. They just go on. And then if anyone brings up anything which may have been fishy, they're like, oh, please, let's not talk about it. It's like from the past.
Right.
It's ever wondered like about the safety of vaccines?
Exactly.
Yeah. So, you want to comment anything else? Otherwise, we can go on to the next similarly heavy thing, which
let's go to the let's follow the money a little bit longer. The massive progressive dark money group you've never heard of. What? I want to hear about the dark money group. Tell me about it.
So just not to be one-sided and be like, oh, I'm just hitting on whatever Republican associated people or whatever. To balance out the scales. Here,
it's all the same money.
We cannot go through it all because none of us is subscribed to the Atlantic magazine. But I just found it interesting.
Wait, is that how that works? Can't I click on like block script and then I can go through it. Just block the script, buddy.
Nice.
You never blocked the script before? Can you see that? Can you see this? Is that showing up on the page? So you go to the top here where you see like it says the Atlantic, and then to the far right there's that little picture of the little lion there that says 22 on it. It's in top right here. It won't let me like show you this. This is really sad. Hold on. I'm gonna do it for those of you who want to see entire screen just for a second. Okay, so let's say you're here and you click on the line. Does that pull down? You see that? Does that show up? Trackers, ads, and more blocked. Are you reading that? No? You can see it or not?
Oh, I am. So you're not seeing me.
Once you see this, you go here and it says scripts, right? And you click on block scripts. and that blocks the scripts, and now you get the whole page.
Nice. That's a
Okay.
good trick. I have similar plugins, but I never thought of doing it that way.
You just have to
So of
simply
course,
block a script. It's nice.
great. So anyhow, this just piqued my interest because even maybe we can read through the 2 paragraphs, or you can just look up the name itself, because this is a group. Again, I even forgot what exactly they're doing, but they're huge, and they are, interestingly enough, literally called Arabella Associates, which I don't even know the proper translation anymore now, but Arabella basically to me is an old world term, and I'm just like, why is this huge group? What are they doing with that name? Like, how does that make sense? I'm curious what they will say here.
Arabella, female given name, possibly Greek or Celtic origin, refers to Arabella. Let's see, like Arabella meaning golden mouth, maybe prayerful. Okay, I'll take it.
But I think it
Probably
actually has
prayerful to bow, though, right?
Please check what
You
it
know?
means in Arabic or something, because there is an old world
Well,
connection.
Bella, I would think of bow if it's from Arabic instead of from Latin.
It's
Bella.
Arab.
Yeah.
But there is also some
Oh,
other
the she Arab. I don't know if that's what it means. Meaning. I don't know. Mouth, golden. I don't know. You can figure it out at some point. Arabella Advisors. Point is, they've got some weird occult name that's super ancient and has to do with femininity and worship. Okay.
Yes, and they're like a hugely influential group. I can't say much about them, but another one of those that's interesting to check out.
She's wearing like a Mao collar shirt that cost $5,000. You know what I mean? That's what you can say.
Good point.
All right. Lies the progressive movement of empire political cash. Over the past half decade, Democrats have quietly pulled ahead of Republicans in so-called dark money spending, funneling hundreds of millions from anonymous donors into campaign around the country. We cannot have a dark money gap, okay? We need to win the dark money race. This is not something that we can let once. This is not okay. The groups that spend money this way tend to have innocuous sounding names and promiscuously spawn many organizations that take up particular states and local causes. The North Fund, for example, spent nearly $5 million trying to legalize marijuana in Montana last year. The 1630 Fund, the indisputable heavyweight of the Democratic dark money, was the second largest super PAC donor in 2020, according to the investigative organization Open Secrets, given roughly $61 million of effectively untraceable money to progressive causes. The organization that connects many of these groups, what a critic might call the mothership, is called Arabella Advisors. Arabella hates this narrative. The organization CEO, Sampriti Ganguly, insisted to me that she runs a relatively small business services organization that does HR, legal compliance, accounting, etc. for clients such as the 1630 Fund. Ganguly comes from a consultant background, and she talks like it. Arabella's mission is to make philanthropy more efficient, effective, and equitable, she told me. But Arabella, like the 1630 Fund, undeniably benefited from the rush of panic political giving on the left during the Trump years. As the 1630 Fund's revenue exploded, it spent more money on Arabella's services, a tenfold increase from 2014 to 2019. And Arabella, as a mission-driven progressive organization, is caught in a major tension on the left. How can progressive groups justify using billionaires' money to influence American politics and civic life while earnestly advocating for a wealth tax or political spending reform? Well, you just toss those things and you just keep the billionaire money, right? Like, you don't have to worry about that other stuff.
So I don't know how interesting the article is going on, but just another one of these big groups I think worthy to check out. And really what piqued my interest was the name. And I was like, how can this be so huge? Why would you call it Arabella? Maybe it's someone's child, but maybe there's something else there.
Yeah, it seems like there's some esoteric there. I don't know. Yeah, people are talking about it. Dark money fueled law firm joins Massachusetts climate suit against big oil. Yeah, I mean, you saw the is it on InfoWars right now? I don't know if they still have it up. Yeah, Club of Rome plan to reduce carbon emissions. Get yourself some of that wellness corporate fascist juice. Anyway, 2050 absolute zero. So the idea of breaking down the carbon emissions so that people have more restriction in what they're doing, and the only way they can travel is through shipping mechanisms, which are zero carbon emission that they can control, right? So if they can control rails are the future, but you're gonna only be able to go where the rails go. So they're moving towards that pretty quickly. Yeah, Arabella Advisors. Okay. We don't engage in any kind
for
of
some reason that
legislative.
Frank Sinatra song comes up in my mind right now. What
Which
a
one?
wonderful world.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
What a joke.
We will make sure we are compliant with all the laws as they are, and should they change, we will make sure we are compliant.
I'll just read the first line.
Ooh, and if we can change the laws, we will comply with the new laws that we make. All right, I like it. You know what? Hey, she's a gangster, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure. So yeah, next thing we're bringing up is actually an upcoming interview. This is the first time, I guess, it's announced.
We're really excited. Dr. Shiva Ayadurai is coming. He's coming to talk to us. He's really important. He's a really fascinating character, and I'm really glad. It took a while to get the interview set up because he's a very disciplined and organized person, and I'm not always. But we had a friend of ours through the Patreon who has been trying to get us to talk to Dr. Shiva for a while, and it just seemed like this is the perfect time because I think he's also, the election cycle. He's running for president, and so it's a good moment. I wanted to make sure he said he was already, but he has announced it. And everything's good. So, interesting guy.
Everyone, kindly check out this interview. It's really interesting. Made in the Swarm: How They Manufacture Your Leaders. Also check out Dr. Shiva's YouTube channel. Notice the subscriber count, and then notice the video views. Something strange is going on there, especially recently.
Yeah, they're definitely trying to keep him down. You can see if you go by popular, you can see he used to have far more popular, 800 million views.
Algorithms, whatever, but you cannot tell
but now that he's running for president, he's getting less than 1,000
algorithm
views.
could yield that result without manual intervention. I think that is.
If you run for president, you're going to get less than 1,000 views for video if you invent an email and you're cool. I mean, but that's the interesting thing. Here's a guy who's supposed to know everything about SEO and how the tech works, and so he's even talking about it. Yeah. It's kind of important. I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. He's going to have a lot to say about the situation.
I'm not, just to be clear, I'm not laughing at you or Dr. Shiva, but just because everyone who's an independent creator or wants to market anything that's not exactly poisonous to anybody can see how sticky this whole thing is to get anything done and to get anywhere. And then you're right. He's I guess there is contest about this as well, but one of the monikers he has is inventor of email. I guess there's different definitions of what the email system exactly is.
Yeah,
whatever. In any case, you're right. He would definitely know, or at least know people that know, and still apparently is not able to quickly fix that because, if YouTube pushes a button, they push a button, I guess. And if you don't have the right connections, there's probably not much you can even do. But it's a great point you're bringing that up, and it's kind of scary, actually, if you think about it that way.
But to give him some cachet, 1963, certificate of copyright registration, title of this work, email, previously or alternative title, computer program for electronic mail system. All right. So, I mean, it's like, so he's from 1982 on. Now, granted, MIT already had systems of like bulletin board systems and they had index systems, but the idea of a peer-to-peer electronic mail system, as simple as it is, just for that exact purpose, I mean, you could say he repurposed technology that existed for this purpose, but that's also what.
Then again, who is ever not doing that? So.
Yeah, I know, but he gets. I'm gonna give him a little credit for at least getting the paperwork out because everyone else was just doing it without even paperworking it. I mean, at the time, it's like software was just shared. People just like interacted with each other. It wasn't really like trade.
Yeah, there was a time before MS-DOS. The most talented.
There wasn't a time before DOS.
Who looks like a big frog or something.
Do you know what DOS stands for? Dirty operating system.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And it was licensed from someone else. But just while we're on the topic of that presentation, I can recommend everyone to check it out because what very few people do, especially those that want to get into leadership positions, they usually don't talk about control systems. They usually don't talk about systems theory, and they don't talk about the inherent flaws in the system. In this case, Dr. Shiva apparently wants to participate in, even though unfortunately I'd have to say realistically, only the main parties, at this point at least it seems, have any chance of winning, or the main two candidates put forth by Democrats or Republicans in the way the system is constructed. But it's just really interesting that he's taking the time to teach people about systems theory, and this will actually connect to the very next link I sent you, the Rise of the Experts, because systems theory actually was developed quite recently, as so many other things.
And good job, Andy, for this. I want to say Andy did an amazing job, and I know it's a great conversation. Love this one.
So from like 1900, the system theory was developed. It's a fascinating field. I think everyone at least should understand the basics. So Dr. Shiva is explaining it, and here and is telling people basically, look, this is how control systems work. This is how they manufacture leaders. Don't fall for it. Even if it seems, just as the other examples I've shown today, someone's on your side and collecting money or whatever, they could still be a variant of a controlled opposition. And I think Dr. Shiva does a great job of explaining that. And then here you have Andy with his guest of Bulletproof Publishing. And in 10 episodes, they go through the available documentation, which I would say may also have a caveat, because even in the past decades, there have been too many opportunities, to forge and alter documents. But still, from what is available and accessible, and anyhow, most of it is quite modern, let's say, starting from about 1900, you can really see how this idea of technocracy, that's the actual term I would use, or they call it the rise of the expert or expertism, has really taken hold, and how it is a central element for what we would call the engineering of consent, or these manufactured democracies we have everywhere. So these two things also tie together, and it shows how, even though it may seem on the surface there's so much variety, on the back end you have these institutions and people that really control, in the case of Brandeis and this presentation that Andy is showing, foreign policy and intelligence operations. And if you have hold on these things, a few other aspects, maybe they may change a bit back and forth, but you have a control of the overall system, which is in a sense invisible or hidden. And through these 7 or 10 episodes, they're showing so many different amazing connections. It's really highly recommended checking out. I don't know, have you seen any part of it yet?
Mark just asks, can you do higher thought, Sky for 3D fourth, time present? Isn't that how everybody thinks all the time? In terms of the Deep Share podcast, yeah, this is an incredible episode. It was one of those things where I'm like, I keep telling Andy, like, we got to do more stuff like this on the channel as well. It was a great deep dive, and I'm going to probably get Bulletproof Pub to come talk a little bit about some of this stuff. It's really interesting about the history of Europe, and also just how managerial theory emerges out of the enclosure movement. And they're saying we can really get more efficiency if we get rid of some of this entropy, and that introduces urbanism in a long process, because up to that point life is a lot more precious. We like during the plague, even during the, like, people care about life, especially after the plague, because there's less life. So people move into the big houses, and people are, the quality of life improves drastically after the plague. And then people stop caring about life because they say, well, really, it's all about the sustainability of the city, because we need to make sure that people can come and go from the city and it lasts forever. And grosser mercantilism leads to managerial theory saying, well, we can sacrifice a bit so that the next generation has more. And that becomes a very logical.
Oh, and it's relevant because this also relates to humanism. This relates to world federalism. This relates to the whole idea of, if utilitarianism, if I increase the utility for everyone, maybe I can sacrifice a life. And what's so funny to me, because they specifically mention utilitarianism and many other terms, many, many years ago, I was reading Kurzweil. I had to think of our conversation with Gianatti. And I was reading Kurzweil. I was like, oh, great. So in 2 years, they're going to have the biotech. In 5 years, going to have the nanotech. Why not? I'm on board. Let's bring the robots. They can clean my room or something like that. And I was talking to
somebody better
for some reason with my, or not even but the religion teacher of my class in a humanistic, high school or whatever you would call it. For some reason, I was talking to her about it. I don't even know how it happened, because she wasn't teaching me. I didn't even have reason to interact with her much. But what I remember is I was just telling her something about technocracy, and was like, oh, this is an interesting concept. I was reading up on it, technocracy, technical alliance from the 1920s, 1930s, which is part of this whole movement, although I believe they didn't mention it during these presentations, or I haven't gotten to that point yet. And by the way, as some of you may know, Elon Musk's grandfather was the head of Technocracy Incorporated Canada. So it's exactly the same people, exactly the same ideology still going on. It's just masked and morphed. So back then I was more looking at the original, and no one knew what I'm even talking about. But anyhow, this religion teacher, she said like, oh, but that sounds very utilitarianistic. And at that point I was like, I don't know if I mind, I'm not sure. But by now I understand what is really the core undercurrent of these types of thought. And I think usually when someone pierces through an ideology, these are the things to kind of look out for, which in a way comes back to the basic thing. And I learned also from your interview with Alexander Dugin, interestingly enough, whatever one may think about individuals. But that's why on the video on my channel, The Virus of Alienation, at the very end, I put Yuval Noah Harari and Dugin to kind of have a virtual fight of ideologies. And the basic binary, let's say, is life sacred or not? Because if it is sacred, then you will do anything and everything to protect it as the highest value in and of itself, without evaluating, oh, how much money can this individual generate, how many organs can I harvest, or whatever, but just for the sake of life and consciousness itself. And the other view is, well, it's just a quality of life-based game. There's like a measure. And if the extinction of other life can overall increase the supposed quality of myself or my group, then it's perfectly fine. And that appears to be the real ideology behind the high-level understanding of humanism. So here again, then you have, as David Ewing Jr. would put it, humanism on one side, which does not see life as sacred, and the, for lack of a better term, followers of Moses or whatever, on the other side, that see life as sacred. And according to him, at least, supposedly these groups are fighting even on the highest power levels of the echelon, that they still haven't exactly figured out which way they want to go. And much of what we observe on the world stage is just this kind of club, maybe even just fighting out the ideological differences or whatever. And that's then how you get, Russia and China and US and whatever, which may have, on some level, have different ideologies, but then again, are also somehow part of the same princely, privileged club, which, as George Carlin kindly told us, most likely you and I ain't in it.
I think that there's definitely effort made to make things immortal. And there are death cults that believe that life is damaged, life is, got issues. The fact that life dies, right, that it withers, that's confusing, especially because we have this sort of ancient belief in this tree of life, this idea that there used to be immortality and that now that we're withering, there must be some error that's happening in life. And I think that's also why people are interested in viruses, because it seems like the answer is the solution is the problem in a lot of ways. Like viruses are being used to shorten genetic sequences so that they mutate and they unravel, right? And so we have these serious aging related disease issues that could be overcome by replacing those adenovirals in our system, because we have adenovirals that are clearly there, that have been there for thousands of generations, and they could either be removed and then you could see what our natural genetics would be like. And I think you've said, that would be great, because then we would know maybe we're already immortal, maybe we don't need something else. But this idea, like the virus, is interesting because it's something that could be theoretically immortal and it could have data storage. So it's that hermit crab thing again, where like we're a species that is a giant universal crab and we're wearing technology as our shell. And at a certain point, does that shell become sentient enough that the shell is wearing the crab instead of the crab wearing the shell? Like we're getting that marriage really quickly. And I don't know, how long it'll be before we decide, like, is it worth it to be alive when you could just have all of the functions of being alive in a technological alternative? But we don't. Right now, we look at biology and we say biology is more efficient, more sophisticated. And so biomimicry is still the better answer than building robots. Like biology does better, more interesting things. And so even the Death Eaters are trying to study biology to be more like it,
Yeah, basically, I agree. And that's why I always say I want to see the biological system actually functioning properly, or the human system, and under the proper voltage and energy input. Because the little bit that I understand from Bruce Lipton and epigenetics, there is great variability in your genetic expression. And of course, there will also be switches for whatever, being healthy, living longer, whatever else it could be. So yeah, Rise of the Expert, highly recommended. And let's see. And then, anything you want to mention more about that? Or we can, I have a few other things we can bring up.
Well, I just think it's interesting about the argument between technology and biology, because I don't think there should be as much of this is kind of like the argument between atheism and spirituality. I don't think there should be as much of an argument. I think it's like two people that really are working towards the same goal. And so it's really strange to me how there's such an argument, because biology is a technology and our technology isn't as efficient as biology.
I'll just bring up one example, which was shared to me by David Albion, actually, whom we had on the show together on Dune a few weeks ago. And apparently, when they came up with all this stem cell treatment stuff, how am I putting it in the nicest way? This was around 89. And suddenly then they started changing all the abortion laws. Just saying. So my only issue is that this shouldn't be contingent. The development of these life extension things shouldn't be contingent on harvesting other humans in whatever way, shape, or form. Yeah, that's all I'm saying. So anyhow, we can move on. This is I'm sure you know this channel. I guess you know this channel. I'm not sure. C3PO's Golden Calf.
Right. Nice.
This goes all completely over my head, but anybody who's into synchromysticism and Mandela effect and ideally knows these movies, this guy's pulling together the most amazing connections. And as we understand more and more how everything is scripted, he's really showing, all kinds of ideas, both in terms of like predictive and so on, and connections between different series that are popular. And then I think sometimes also showing Mandela effects and so on. But yeah, really great. Anyone into synchromysticism and all the programmed scripted reality stuff, highly recommended to check it out.
I can only imagine that, like, if you're writing for a TV show and you went to liberal arts school and studied philosophy in Santa Cruz, and then they make you write like a scene which is about a teacher doing a science class, like the one thing you didn't study, you know what I mean? So what you're going to do is you're going to make it about philosophy. Like, you can't help it. That's just who you are if you're a liberal arts writer. But also, of course, that means you're going to always find that in every movie all the time, which is sweet.
And the liberal arts, the modern version, is also mentioned in The Rise of the Expert, as in terms of how much this type of thought has infiltrated everything, and also how, therefore, you have so many willfully ignorant participants. So now what we move on to is basically the short Tartaria info section. Here I just want to bring up different presentations.
Good to see Stellium and Michelle.
Exactly. Nice. With Stellium and Michelle talking about titanic
and
trees.
Chad Williams. Sweet.
Then there's two more links in the chat. One is with yes.
This one or the should I go to the art? Yeah, this one. Okay.
Well, this is the one I showed you earlier. There's not too much I can say about it because I really don't know enough. But this is a really interesting connections between Tartary, Templars, and Mormons. One of these long articles I can just recommend everyone to take a look at. Yeah, these are just ideas I'm throwing out now. There's not too much I'm explaining about it because I am not qualified enough.
Well, tell us what this idea is. Like, what is it? The Crusader story. What is this about?
I think I even showed you. You know it. You understood it faster than I did because it's something with the Mormons and the Templars. And I'm sorry, because I read through it, but I even completely forgot already.
This has been like the Divine Council was talking a lot about this idea. Like, so you talk about the Bogomils and the different kinds of Christians that were expelled and indigenous people and the immolation of the Templars by the most Christian king, right? So this idea of also there being a secret native, was it the Bible puts it, now go attack the Amalekelites and totally destroy everything that belongs to them. Do not spare them. Put men to death, women, children, infants, cattle, etc. So this kind of time of genocide and how it's happening in the East and the West. And
always the strange connection with the Templars. There's supposed Baphomet or devil worship, Baphomet or Mohammed worship is not exactly clear. You have the Alhambra decree, at least in official history. Yeah. So again, this is kind of the Tartaria and question of quote unquote proto-Islamic heritage rabbit hole that this also connects back to. The next thing is with Gary Kasparov. Or are you somewhere else? Yeah, so this I just wanted to bring up anyone who speaks French. I mean, you can translate it for yourself. Interesting. Also, I had no idea that Gary Kasparov is into recentist thinking. So anybody who hasn't learned about this yet, when the work of Fomenko was popularized in the 2000s, I guess, because he wrote the first books together with his colleague, I think starting in 1990, showing with statistical methods how much of the medieval history appears to be forged or manufactured or altered. And this, I just pulled it up because it's an article in French, which shows that there's also French researchers. One of them we also had on the show called Didier Lacapelle. And in French, They call it ressentisme or recentism. So that's just like the French flavored version of this historical research. There's quite a few French blogs, which more or less interesting information about it. Yeah, just wanted to bring it up. And I had no idea that Gary Kasparov is into that, but yeah. And then we have, yeah, maybe last thing, someone we had brought up quite a few times before. This is an interview, just a short one with Dr. Kusch. I actually really think, and I'll be looking for that now, that you should interview him, because this guy on the left is like the researcher for strange underground caverns and
Wow.
perfectly chiseled out, lasered hallways, which even were measured, and it was like it's basically impossible for anyone to recreate that right now. We're measured with lasers if it's straight and stuff like that. So just simply finding very interesting and also highly advanced structures underground. He's somewhat popular in Austria, and supposedly he's a bit more, let's say, cautious now about his statements, because he has become more popular. So you can't just, maybe speculate as much as you did before. And yeah, of course, you have the skull and bones again there. Yeah, I can't tell the whole story because I don't know all the details, but I think he would definitely be a great interview partner for you, to do a Vice special the proper way, do an Exertus special, and
go to the caves. That sounds good. You had this thing on RFK Jr. though. Is this from the earlier thing, or is this different? Is this connected to that wellness thing, or is this separate?
Yeah, I think you pulled it up because of Del Bigtree. He's one of the guys, let's say, also involved in that whole thing, where still the question is, are they really willing to go down to the transmission idea question or not? Okay, then I have a bit more dark stuff, and then I think a tiny bit of comedy.
Oh yeah.
And then we're through. So this one is, I'm posting it right now. Maybe some of you have heard about the recent scandal or media hype about what's his name, P. Diddy, or whatever he's called now.
Yeah.
And somehow
not P. Nelly, P. Diddy.
Yeah. Some of this video kind of showed up on my feed and was like, okay, interesting, I'm gonna watch it. I realized this is probably an AI voice and using recycled material. Really? And then, of course, these things start showing up a lot on your screen. So I was kind of clicking through it, and then, no, this one is a good one. Okay. And then because then I ended up there, and I realized, oh, this is the channel that apparently originally interviewed one of the main whistleblower, who you see on the right, Jaguar, right? So just anyone who's interested in this and ready for some, dark stuff and things they didn't want to know about, maybe some stars. But
you're not saying this video is deep fake. You're saying it's a real video, right? Yeah. Okay.
No. This video seems good, and everyone, please, and I hope body language people will go into that. The woman on the right seems very expressive and honest, to me at least, and she's even recounting the story of the Tupac shooting and other things. So anyhow, at least from what is available, this is apparently where you have the source material, and I guess it's better to listen to some whistleblower directly than to only see all these recycled videos. So is anyone interested in this? Yeah, I can recommend checking it out. And unfortunately, when you understand the themes and so on of, how should I say, wealth, power, control systems, dominating other individuals and so on, and making lots of money by it, and having people do things against their will, you will see the recurring patterns. And yeah, as even Alex Jones revealed already in the 90s, unfortunately, or about the 90s, the media industry is apparently as bad as it seems. What I'm suspicious about, though, at the same time is, of course, why are they bringing this up now? Why are they talking about this guy? And who are all the individuals they are not talking about? But also, maybe in this interview, or if you look at any type of documentation, but Jagger Wright is explaining this, she's even showing how this type of racket and abuse systematically has apparently been going on for at least 3 generations. So you already have previously, let's just say, media executive, most likely exploiting actors or whatever, and then that just gets recycled, and the most skilled or ruthless exploited actor then becomes the next media executive, and the cycle continues. And
you change your name, so it's like a little bit of code switching for your schizophrenia. Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, you changed the label name, but or this guy also. I mean, he's apparently
code switch. You're like, I'm no longer, what was his name? Puff Daddy. Now I'm P Diddy, and I'm a new person. And like, unless someone like gets a psychic to tell you you're a Puff Daddy, you don't go back to Puff Daddy. And like, if you do go back to Puff Daddy, then you can remember secrets of like patents and microfilm records that are in your memory.
Yeah. What does Puff even mean in English? What's your correlation to Puff?
Puff the Magic Dragon. I don't know if that's all it is, but I immediately think of Puff the Magic Dragon. So like what I think of when I think of rappers, you know, there's several different kinds of rappers, but like a lot of the rappers are associated with the middle class white folk music movement, like Peter, Paul and Mary. And you can hear it in the early rap music that they had like really interesting loops of folk rock and things like that they were working on. And it might be associated with the fact that some of these were biracial rappers who had like a white mother or something that were into folk music. Like these things are like the cultures are a lot more connected. And back then they were far more connected than they are now. So Puff the Magic Dragon is all about a boy who is smoking pot, right? And eventually he puts away smoking pot, right? But it's also about a boy who's having an imagination and he's playing with a dragon. As he gets older, he no longer goes off to imagination land. So there's like several layers to the Puff the Magic Dragon song. And so Puff's the name of the dragon, but also puffing on the magic dragon refers to like, you know, it's not like a bong. It's like the single tube. What's that called again? Like a,
I should know the name.
Oh my gosh. I feel so old. Peace pipe, a steamroller. A steamroller. Yes, that's right. So a Puff Magic Dragon refers to the steamroller. And at a certain point, you get too old to be, you know, a stoner boy. And a big part of Peter, Paul, and Mary's music is like, I'm the kid who ran away with the circus. And like, you got to stop being that kid, you know, and grow up and become. And this is why a lot of white middle class yuppies evolved out of the folk music. Because you could have either died of heroin in the Woodstock, or you could have become someone with a Macintosh laptop in the early 90s. And that's Puff the Magic Dragon. And I think that's a big reason why he also retired the title, because he's like, I'm no longer a child. I'm no longer Puff the Magic Dragon. Now I'm, you know, and what is he now? And now it's like he's a sex symbol. As soon as he became P. Diddy, he started wearing these weird white pimp coats and all these things like that. So it definitely associated with his like feeling like he's accomplished himself.
Okay, because in German or Austrian slang, exactly the way it is written, Puff means brothel. So
it means gay or brothel?
Brothel.
Oh, like you go into a poof? Okay. In Britain, yes. a poofster is a homosexual. So you'd be like, oh, that guy's a real puff. That guy's a real poofster. You know, that's a puff. You know, that. So they're all there. It's all there.
Yeah. So yeah, really dark, really unfortunate. But yeah, recurring pattern.
Abbott's angry. He's like, Stanley Steamer was a bong in the 70s. All right. I'm sorry. All right. Anachronistic reviews of Puff Daddy's nickname. My bad. But yeah, I think you guys should watch this. I'll subscribe and I'll finish watching this. I haven't seen this yet, so I'll look at this. And then, yeah, we had...
Yeah, then I don't have to pull it up, but I'll just mention, as many know, the so-called Franklin cover-up, because I have it on Internet Archive. So just for background. So here, going from Hollywood to a different one, Gaza Wood, in the section Manufactured Reality, not claiming or saying that anything does or does not happen there, but these are just very interesting videos filmed in locations that look similar to what one might see on TV, where you can, you know, clearly see that it's a manufactured, let's call it, report. And to anyone who's ever wondered how they get such clean shots, well, this is...
Well, they have a lot of time in between the explosions, you know what I mean, to get ready.
Exactly, yes.
Feel like...
So the big problem, again, that most likely this is occurring on all sides always, but again, it's obfuscating what is the tragedy and the real issue and the real abuse and exploitation that actually happens, which you probably don't get to see on TV, but you get to see these things. And
dude, there's probably a lot more money in making. There's probably a lot more money in making like disaster footage that looks real like this than video games.
Yeah,
and same technology. Just look at it, they're literally using Unreal Engine right now.
Yeah.
It's pretty great.
And I mean, I mean, even without Unreal Engine, NASA was managing this pretty well for over 50 years. So, I mean,
Yeah,
but I
but
think
anybody can do it now,
they're
which is
ways
great.
better.
But
Huh?
isn't this nice? Because it means like you don't actually need people to die anymore, because now you just need people to feel like people are dying. We're living in a post-truth era, and it does everything it needs to do.
If it were true that people wouldn't get hurt or die, then I'd be like, oh, I'm so happy about it. But this is only then used to, again, rile up groups and whatever, that actual real things happen. So that's obviously the problem about this. And sometimes maybe you can't even tell which is which. So, yeah. Okay, then, yes?
Yeah, no, it is. It is.
Okay. So
Meanwhile, that red
switch.
heifer.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
I'm looking
So
at a couple more things here.
Yes, just to close up, we have a fun section.
Oh, okay, this is good. Yeah.
This is some movie, or this is a guy.
I remember this. I put a clip of this in my AI thing a couple of years ago, talking about Will Smith and AI. Do you see Will Smith's new failed video game?
No.
Dude, Tencent made some new video game with Will Smith that cost like $140 million, and nobody's heard of it because it's just that bad. It looks like, I mean, all this footage, you'd think it would have sold. I just feel bad. They're just gonna give up on it. It's like no one even remembers it. It's gone. It's disappeared. But yeah, Will Smith's life is just poor guy. Hey, look at our buddy. Look at our buddy right there. Good to see you. That's cool. Oliver Tree got to go on a date with Sophia. I didn't know that. That's funny.
So anyone can watch this for themselves, but at least to me, this seems incredibly scripted, to be honest.
Oh yeah.
Either this AI model is very highly trained, which it probably is, but still, I'm pretty sure this is very scripted. And so, yeah, I think, but this is how people.
Sophia is more of an art project. Like Ben Gertzel,
I've had my robot girlfriend, but not with that model, at least, I think.
Ben Gertzel and I have talked about this a bit, and like obviously, I don't think anyone was supposed to think Sophia was ChatGPT. Like Sophia was supposed to show people the potential for a non-biological personhood. And the main thing is people need to be able to interact with it. So they trained it as an art project. It is an art project. And so it does have pre-fed things it says, responses that are help train so that it says the right thing. But it also has a lot of open cog in it. So it does have the capacity to create and formulate new responses. And this is all years ago. This is before we got to the modern RNNs that can really, like, Sophia could be tapped into a chat GPT like mixtral model, and it's all of a sudden far more impressive. But what you do have is like a robot that has a 3D scanner in her chest, so they can see the room, they can see where people are. That thing is 10 years old. That's not a very impressive 3D scanner at this point, but it's something that does, it gives it sensorial information and the capacity to take information, digest it, and make decisions on it. That's the beginning of AI. That's why Sophia was so important, and why it became, a citizen in a country where women aren't allowed to drive. It's all part of this larger plan. But I wouldn't say Sophia is supposed to be like. It's weird because people are arguing how efficient or how conscious Sophia is. That's not the point. It's just that Sophia is there as an example of, like, once you wanted to put ChatGPT into something, you could have 1,000 Sophias all around the world and one artificial intelligent consciousness existing in 1,000 bodies, right? And so I think that's like the major beginning. And also, how are we going to socially accept an AI? It's easier to accept Sophia because we know she's not as competent as us. It would be a lot harder to accept a cyber citizen, once they're superior to us. So this set the precedent early that we have cyber citizens, and you're going to have to learn to deal with it.
Yeah, I can see the eyes turning red already. Yeah, was thinking of the hive mind, but now it makes sense because they already knew how they're gonna set up the tech. So the last section is a mix between, again, let's say opposition and comedy. So the next is Project Not a Lot. I've shown her before. This is Intel Lady.
Great.
There's a reason why there's a reason why I'm showing it, not only because I absolutely love her impression of Carrie Cassidy, but also because here one of the guys she likes making fun of is Charlie Ward. Charlie Ward may only be known to some. He's done all kinds of shows, especially also during the crisis, became quite popular. But overall, how should I say, not seem to be completely honest with his own past or where he got his supposed information from, which went so far as that there was an expose by a guy called M. Seeker of Truth, who even later interviewed his own son, so this Charlie Ward guy's son, and basically confirmed that, yeah, it's basically a grifting operation. And why is it interesting to me is she's making now fun of these guys for good reason. And then if you open up the next link, which I sent on a private chat, deliver the truth, whatever the cost. And strangely enough, you have this Charlie Ward guy, even recently doing a video with General Flynn, where I'm like, well, if this left guy at the very least is...
Are you kidding?
Wait. If the left guy at the very least is a high-level intelligence operative or highly intelligent, then he would have understood or known about the expose by M. Seeker of Truth, which perfectly shows that the guy on the right, I'm not even going to say anything.
But Charlie Ward's shirt, too. That's the kind of shirt that lets you know their intelligence, you know?
Yeah, maybe that's the reason why then. So either the guy on the left didn't do any due diligence on the guy on the right, or they're part of the same team, which makes it even worse, I guess, or I don't know. But I'm just bringing it up because especially on the guy on the left has been heralded as one of the, we're going to fix it. And even here to talk about it, we're going to clean it up, we're going to do it, just like when they rescue all the dumbs and whatever they do. And I'm just like, yeah, I'm all for it. But if they're not actually doing something, but just pretending or funneling money, then, people should know about it. That's all I'm saying.
Right.
Yes. So, okay. And then we go over to German, I want to say comedy, and then we can wrap it up. This is something that's incredibly crazy. If you're not in German-speaking region, you haven't heard about it. So this guy, apparently this is a reaction video, which is why I have all the funny people falling over themselves. But this guy basically is going around, he's 18, and he's giving people tickets for traffic violations. He's not a policeman or anything. He's wearing this shirt and so on. He's
just a good German.
Very, very good. But the thing is, he's doing that in the smallest villages you could possibly find, giving people tickets and reporting them through an app where, nobody would ever have bothered. And even if the police came by, they'd walk right past the supposed violation because there's just nobody to be violated there traffic-wise, let's say. And this went crazy viral in Germany, and I'm bringing this up because on the one hand, it maybe shows the worst possible characteristics of
a German.
How do you spend your life snitching on someone else, especially for no reason? And this is just
pretty Nazi, isn't it? Yeah.
Well.
Remember that documentary, The Wave? I don't know if it's a documentary or it's a film, but there's this great German
The Wave. Yes.
Yeah, and it's like, look, I'm going to have you kids do a wave. Germans know this, Americans don't, but it's a great movie. Every American should watch this movie because you're wondering, how could you get a bunch of people to be like that? How could you get even one person to go give tickets?
Don't they do these waves in every sports stadium?
Sure. Well, the wave is more of a metaphor, though. Like you convince a group of kids that they're allowed to do the wave and others aren't allowed to do the wave. And they all want to be part of the group that can do the wave, And so eventually they become part of the wave. This is and it's an interesting metaphor for fascism and group psychology. It's very Wilhelm Reichian in the group psychology of things. But this is exactly, you look at that kid and he's, on one hand, he's trying to make sure there's no chaos in the streets. On the other hand, everyone's looking at him like he's the chaos. And so whatever the order that wins is the consensus, but like really, if you were in Italy or Greece, like half of your population would love this guy. Cause have you ever been down there and there's just cars in the middle of the street and you're like, get out of here. Luckily they're Italian cars. So like you and your brother can pick them up and move them. But still the point is that in Germany, in Austria, people are a little bit more respectful. Like even if you park in the middle of the street, unless you're like a West German, you're going to move to the side to an extent. You know what I mean? So this guy is fighting a problem that doesn't necessarily exist, but he's doing it for altruistic. Look at his eyes. Look at that guy's eyes. He wants to save Germany, where'd it go? I lost his eyes.
And of course the real sadness about this is, and I looked at a few videos, it doesn't seem like it's scripted, even though some people said if this guy was an actor, it'd be the, best thing ever.
Funniest thing ever. Yeah.
But assuming this is organic, or as organic as it can be, because supposedly even his mother at some point tried defending him by claiming he was bullied so much or something, but maybe also that actually is not true. So God knows how this came about, but in the end, the only real explanation can be this is, if it's organic, this is also due to society, and it can just show you how insane can you get, because an 18-year-old is not really responsible for his development up to that point, or not solely at least.
This just, do you feel like this has to have happened in Germany so much in history, or in Europe in general? Like, just people that come around and say, hey, like, you're not allowed to have your towel hanging over your fence. Like, that's,
how much lack of self-direction must I have to be spending my time deliberately, even voluntarily, enforcing the rules of an oppressive system, knowing even that people get pissed off on it and so on, and then even doing it to an extent that even the system's own executive organs wouldn't do it. I mean, that's like, I want to be
European cities are small, though. Like, having cars parked everywhere. Maybe this guy's living in his city and he's noticing the chaos and he's super German about it. He doesn't like the chaos. I'm just saying, like, there's a lot of this issue of people saying, "Oh, I can just park wherever I want to park," and it's just because it's like, what is this, the post-plague era, and Rome has collapsed, and you can just park where you want to park? I don't know. Maybe he's actually onto something. Maybe this is the beginning of like the new Reichsjugend, and he's just trying to make sure that there's order in the streets. I don't know.
Yeah, and just someone asked, he's not directly impersonating the police because he's altered the signs a little bit.
Yeah. He's like a community. Annoying. This is Hitler's Youth. I don't know how else to put that. This is like the vibe. And it's not just, I don't mean it in like even the worst way I could mean it. I could mean it far worse than I do.
Even just in the way of everyone has to conform to whatever supposed rules the system made up. Yeah. Yeah. And I'll snitch on you. Okay, so this is the next thing. There is we have to go back. We have to go to the exact point. He made a. Oh wait, I mean, I don't know if these type of things are even funny, but wait, let's see.
I think anything kind of Germanic is funny. Like runes are hilarious.
Yes, so I'm bringing this up for a particular reason. Oh yeah, okay. There was one funny.
Oh, I like him.
There is. Okay, so just for giggles, I hope this, but I mean, if it's there, it can be fun enough. Oh no, I posted it in the main chat, which I didn't want, but that's okay. Posting it here. So before we get into this, and I'll explain what's going on here, we can watch this clip. It's only 30 seconds. It's from a different, this guy, just for context, this guy is like the main important, he's like the,
let me get the audio for it.
Steve, what is the most famous, like Steve Corbett or something? What are these guys called? Trevor Scott?
He's like me? Okay.
No, he's not like you. Pause it for a second. Pause it. So he's like the main, how do you call it? This UK guy that's making these comedic shows in the US. What's his name? There's a few of these faces, that always make the most left-leaning liberal propaganda comedy shows.
Jon Stewart.
Yeah. And then they make fun of anything and everything. So before
I'm secretly liberal. You guys don't know. Look at how liberal I can be.
I work auf die leckere Müller Deutschland. So let's just watch this.
Die leckere Müller Deutschland mit. Ich zweifle keine Sekunde, das Volk. Deutschland wird lieben. Deutschland.
Drink it. Quick as you can.
Lecker. Das schmeckt nicht den geringsten Anhaltspunkt, der auf eine NS-Ideologie schließen lässt. LinkedIn.
Okay.
All right.
It's pretty hilarious. So go back to the other one, because I just wanted to show something, where he's, I think, really fun with the Müller milk. Yeah, John Oliver. Yeah, thank you. Okay. So go back to the previous link, and then immediately stop the video if you can, because we need that particular frame where it says unconditional.
I'll reload it from that spot.
Yes. Pause. Oh, back. You have to go back a second. It's for the yes. Okay, almost.
Right
here? No. Where it shows the invitation.
Vishwamadavananda Peter Meyer lässt Querdenker, Reichsbürger, rechtsextreme Esoteriker und Verschwörungs...
Yes. Okay, great. All right. So in terms of whatever opposition, I don't know, not even opposition. What's interesting about this is the most famous comedy show, as I just explained, in Germany, always making the headlines and so on. And here they picked on a particular sect, I guess rightfully so, some guy who claims to be a self-realized guru, anyone who's watching a bit of David Ewing Jr. knows, unfortunately, and maybe just like many supposed Kabbalists, you have to look more deeply. How did they get this idea exactly? But you have to go back to the exact frame, otherwise I can show you.
Da war nichts in seinen Ashram. Aber ganz ehrlich, es ist doch eigentlich auch am Ende egal. Irgendwie ist doch egal, was irgendeine
So they had good reason, because also when you have to join there, you basically say, oh, I'm doing the work. And also you have to say the guru is always right and he's selling like porcelain of his feet for 10,000 or whatever. And it deliberately says in the join membership form, like, oh, if you join, then you cannot trust your own mind anymore. The guru is basically your God now. Yeah, so really bad thing. And anyhow, they also have different ashrams and places. And one of the places was the invitation that you just showed, but also skipped over again. And that's the whole point of the thing. I'm going to show you now. So this was simply an event of, you know, different people, I guess, talking about consciousness and history and different interesting topics that are somewhat known in the alternative media scene. At least some of them I've also spoken to or know about them. Some I don't know so much about them, so I can't vouch.
They
for
blurred
everyone
out
or
"You're in
whatever.
my face," Raph. I can't believe they didn't want them to know that we were at
This is the thing, and this is the joke now, and it ended up here with millions of views. Who is the blurred out face on the bottom left, Andreas?
Is that Mike Stellium?
No, but who could it be who's German and who you know? It is Martin Hipp.
No way. That's Martin?
Yes.
Why would they blur out Martin?
Yeah, that was
like,
also the
Martin's
question.
way too sexy for TV. That's
exactly.
Why.
No, we spoke about it.
Saw his face, they'd be like, but that guy, I want to know what he has to say. So they had to blur it.
So
Martin's one
anyone
of
who's
my favorite
been
people, actually.
watching,
That's really sad that they would do that. I mean, obviously he's not a private citizen who wants to be censored. So they're doing it just to black out any information he might be putting out. And the information he's putting out is awesome. He's not a hater. He's a lover. I mean, he's one of the coolest dudes we know. He's a nice guy.
That's the best explanation I heard, because I spoke with Martin, of course, right when I saw it, because sometimes this guy is funny and the topics he chooses are interesting. So of course I was watching this particular episode and I suddenly see it and I was like, what is this? And this is not even the first time. There was another presentation maybe a year ago where he was talking about alternative hippie people or whatever. And I know all kinds of people. And then I was like, oh, how funny. He's showing a music video as an example, like, look at these crazy, you know, hippies sitting around in the grass. Yeah? And they were some of people where I was like, I know these people, like, these are friends of mine. I'm like, wow, they managed to get on like the most mainstream German TV show ever.
It's possible that, I mean, this is unlikely, but do you think it's possible that they're trying not to offend Martin? Because, like, even though he's going after this one guy, it's not Martin that offended him. So he doesn't want to be like, I'm upset at this guy and then put Martin's face there. Because maybe someday he'll talk with Martin. I don't know. It's possible.
Yeah, who knows? Who knows? I mean, that is correct. But the thing is that this event itself didn't have much to do with this monastery order or whatever sect they had.
Gotcha.
It was just the location where this was hosted. But it's doubly interesting because some other people that are there are either maybe more well-known. So my speculation was maybe the more well-known people, they put their face. But at least one of the guys there, Feiko, he's like the main important Q+, let's say, still relevant researcher in Germany. Eventually, I hope we're going to put him on with you as well. I'll see if we can do that. But they didn't blur out his face. They didn't blur out some other faces. And then Martin only speculated and said, yeah, he was also wondering. His thought was maybe they tried to create artificial division and then be like, oh, are you an agent? They blurred out your face, you know, or something like this. Yeah, really strange. I would love to know how the editorial decision was made as to whose faces to blur out or not. But anyway,
I'd also like to do some research on, you know, because like in America, we have our own, in the 70s and 80s, we associate with the cult period in America. And Germany and Austria have very specific laws about cults, right? Like Scientology is banned as if it were a cult. And there have been a lot of cults in Germany. There was the Fiat Lux, there was the Universal Life, there was the Eckankar, there was the Streech and Moy, all these different ones. There's cannibal cults and everything. So the idea that Germany has a media system that is afraid of cults, and it's interesting because we spent the first part of this episode kind of going through a list of faces connected about follow the money, about politics, whereas the politicians are going to do the exact same thing, but about this group of people that are having a transcendental yoga retreat. You know, it's kind of, they're like, well, we should really be careful about who's in this yoga retreat instead of spending 20 minutes talking about the CPAC money, you know?
Yes, I mean, in terms of investigating that group and what's in their membership form, I think it's actually good. It doesn't seem like it's a very healthy relationship that those guys are building, but that's their problem, yeah? But it's just funny. He just pulled it up because it's like, oh, look, one of the events, you had these alternative thinking people there, which of course he doesn't like because in his worldview, they're all completely crazy, right? But it was just
I'm like
hilarious
this
that he
guy. I mean,
pulled
look
it up.
how stable minded this stable genius right here. Yeah.
One of the guys earning the most money in Germany in media, and also he was one of the guys, I brought this up a few episodes ago, the whole story with Strache and the Freedom Party and how the Austrian government was dissolved in 2019. And he was one of the guys who, before the news broke in Austria, like a month before, already made funny references to it. So, you know, definitely connected in some way, shape, or form. Yeah, that's like, you know,
the Solar Temple, the Order of the Solar Temple.
Solar Temple? No.
Yeah, it's one of those cults. This one's from France originally, but it's pretty popular in Austria and Germany and Switzerland. And the OTS, they consider themselves a Knights Templar derivative, essentially, or like the true Knights Templar. You know, they're pretty big. Fraternité de la Pyramide was there, like,
maybe I mentioned in Rise of the Expert, they mentioned the connection with Annie Besant, who was also involved in those groups and then moved to Theosophy. And from there, you have Rudolf Steiner, who moved it to Anthroposophy for Austria and Germany, and not even saying that there aren't relevant ideas contained within it, but we still, or that are obviously, you know, relevant or suitable or working, but still we have to look deeper. Where did this all things originate from? And it really seems even most of the counterculture or whatever was seeded, planted, curated, and controlled, yeah, to an incredible extent. It's really amazing. And it's relevant because then people always refer back to something. Like I know, for example, one a teacher, let's say in Germany, who's talking about anthroposophy, but of course he will derive information from what has come before and the influences that were there. And if anything of that is tainted, of course that gets reproduced, which is why David Ewing Jr. always goes on a rant when, you know, someone's making comments that maybe are not thoroughly researched, because like, yeah, if people will read this, they believe it, and then they will fight over it, and, you know, 50 years down the line it will cause a conflict. But the real problem is we see how this is happening today. We see the seeds of many decades of dissent sown and blossoming now.
1978, Di Mambro founded the Golden Way Foundation, based in a villa in Saconnet d'Arve, Switzerland. The foundation aimed to discuss issues of pollution, the environment, and social ties. It aimed to develop knowledge about the evolution of future quality of life, such as healthy living, organic farming, and alternative healthcare techniques. This is the kind of thing that was associated in the 70s and 80s with these cults, right? Like,
and another
environmentalism,
because it's
organic
so important.
farming.
Yes, exactly. But because it's so important, because these are things where I guess most individuals, probably also in chat, would be like, yeah, organic farming, yay, why not? All of these things.
Well, you know, but you have to use fetuses as the fertilizer.
Yeah. And in Rise of the Expert, they really also show how there is deliberate vacuum being created, or even like with the communists. This is also something connecting to the David Ewing Jr. research, how basically the communists were just like, oh, we're going to completely destroy everything for a few decades. So then we can bring in the supposedly reformed communists as the socialists, which are just exactly the same as the original progressives. So we can basically insert it through shock treatment in a sense. And it seems similar things happen here, because everyone would want organic farming, or let's say European Union. Everyone would want, yeah, let's all join together. Who wants borders? Everyone wants to travel freely and all of that. So these are natural and organic, compassionate and loving thoughts and motives. And they just get completely hijacked then by these systems, because the people don't realize all the elements and how then they're participating in something which ultimately works against their own interests and is really dangerous to themselves and their society. Yeah. Rant off.
Yeah. But I mean, at the end of the day, like, you got to think about it again. If you're in the 60s and you're walking around in Austria and Germany, everyone's wearing suits and trying to be like Western German Americans, and then you see a group of people that are doing yoga and they're talking about the Knights Templar. And
I want to
old
join,
Germanic.
but that's what I'm saying. This can as well just be the time capsuled agent preparation
Of course.
school.
But that's
willing or
also why you
unwilling.
see like dudes who were cool in their 30s in Germany now are in their 60s and they're members of these organizations that are, you know, a cult into yoga and have lots of money behind them because, you know, I mean, it makes a lot of sense to me that the elite would be into organic farming, at least for themselves. And you can see that, like they're saying, okay, well, maybe not everywhere. Like maybe we'll ship the nuclear rice from China to the Bolivians, but we get to have the organic farming, right? So I see that also that there's simultaneously two systems, one for you and one for us, kind of a thing. The science of death.
Yeah. And that's the last thing that I got for today. I was
And a fun
thinking
one as well. Yeah, nice.
I was like, it's maybe an article for Gennady. So this is just an interesting historical review, let's say, of the past decades regarding the science of consciousness and different researchers and different reports where people are claiming they had near-death experiences, they saw themselves from above, and all of these things. It both talks about this idea of the life review, which they somewhat explain or at least correlate with heightened brain activity when oxygen is cut off. But it also goes through different examples of people actually seeing themselves or seeing a situation from above while they are in a limbo state, which I think has been reported so much that I wouldn't dare to deny that this is occurring. Just so much because last time we had been talking about, you know, where does consciousness originate and all of those ideas. That article is a quite interesting read to anyone who's not too deep into it yet. And aside from that, I can just recommend at least to consider the works by Dolores Cannon and especially a guy called Michael Newton, who's a psychologist, and he wrote a book called Life Between Lives, where different people are recounting what they seem to remember when they are asked to in a hypnotic state remember what happened before they were born or something. And just interesting that many people then say very similar things. Again, this could be a cultural seed because by now we realize there is only one culture almost. So this has to be checked back against that as well. But
we're only one river. We're only one sea. And it flows through you. And it flows through me. I'm sorry. Peter, Paul, and Mary is going to be stuck in my head today. I apologize. If I had a hammer, dude, I would hammer in the morning. I would hammer in the evening. I would hammer all over this land. I would hammer out danger. I would hammer out warning. I would hammer out love between the brothers and the sisters. All over this land. Sorry, I couldn't help myself.
No, I think it fits the theme. Yes. Yeah, and with that, in terms of we're done, what I got.
All right. So that's pretty important. I think we should all be more conscious of death. Get it? And yeah, we're going to do Wednesday Ultra later. I don't know if you're still awake, but you're definitely welcome to join. I think Tiffany from Turning Point USA will be there. And that would be a fun time to talk about.
What? I'll just watch and see. I'll just post in the chat like.
I'll throw you a link just in case you want to jump in. You can just be like, all right, and then you can get out when you're done. You know, just whatever you want. I'll tag you in. It'll be fun.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for listening and joining. Thank you, Andreas.
Yeah, bro.
Like and subscribe to Examples.
All right, we'll see you guys soon. Take care.